understand how much power his words have.
Van, I need you to stand by because I need to get to this, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. My apologies. I want to bring in now Marco Rubio, speaking out about the protest in Donald Trump's rally tonight. Mr. Rubio, thank you for joining us tonight, Senator. Were you able to see the events that took place at the Trump rally, and what is your reaction to it?
Well, I've seen the news reports over the last hour or so. Look, it's disturbing. I think we've reached a break point in our politics. I want to put aside for a moment the elections and all of that.
I would think so, Aaron. And no.
Yeah, I want to put aside the elections and any sort of talk about that for a moment and just say, look, there are consequences to words. There's no doubt about it. Let me back up and say this. It is clear from watching these images that there are people that are protesting tonight that are part of organized efforts to disrupt this event. This is not some sort of organic thing that happened. It's Chicago. There are a lot of groups that do this basically professionally in some instances, and you can see there's this diffuse group of people there, but you can tell that it is an organized and orchestrated effort. And I don't think you have a right to disrupt an event the way they've tried to do so just because you don't like what the person is saying, okay? So number one. On the other hand, I do think that Mr. Trump needs to own up to the fact that the rhetoric he has used at some of his events have also contributed to the climate that you've seen in parts of other rallies that he's had. There are consequences to the things people say in politics. There are, a president, for example, can't just speak their mind. There are real consequences. They can't just say whatever comes to mind. There are real consequences to the words that someone speaks, whether it's as a presidential candidate or ultimately as a president. And I think we're seeing some of that over the last few days. I think tonight is about something a little bit different. This is certainly an organized effort. But we've reached a break point here where we have to kind of understand as a nation that either we can have a process by which we can debate policy differences in a civil way without this sort of thing happening, or we are careening towards the type of disruption that you see in other societies that has never been typical of the American political discourse, save a couple of tragic moments in our history.
Yeah, and we're looking at some of those violent scenes playing out from earlier as you were speaking, Senator. I have to ask you, you have been one that you've really taken on Donald Trump and his rhetoric. You've gone head-to-head with him. But you had the opportunity last night at that debate to speak out against the tone and the violence, because Jake Tapper asked him about it at some of his campaign rallies. And a lot of people feel like you and other candidates fail to take him on. How do you respond to that?
Well, that's not accurate. For example, when the issue came up about Islam, I said, presidents, one of the appeal that Donald Trump has to a lot of people is that he often says what they wish they could say. But presidents can't always just say whatever you want. There are consequences to your words. And I talked about how going around saying that all Islam hates America has real consequences. I think on the issue you're talking about, the tone in the debates, basically that question was not asked to me. It was like the fourth person that got the comment on it, and by then the question had evolved into something else. But I have clearly spoken out over the last couple of days of being disturbed about the images we saw yesterday of someone getting sucker punched as he's walking up the steps. We now see reports that allegedly a reporter was assaulted by his campaign manager. I say allegedly. I don't know all the facts about that. But I said earlier today as well, there isn't fights breaking out at my rallies or at Ted Cruz's rallies or at Kasich rallies or at Bernie Sanders rallies or Hillary Clinton rallies. There's something different going on here. And I think when you have a president candidate, according to the polls and the delegate count, the front runner of the Republican Party, going into rallies and basically telling his followers, in the good old days, people that do that leave on stretchers, I think there's consequences to that he should own up and take some responsibility. That by no means excuses what these protesters have done tonight in Chicago as you watch images of them. This is an orchestrated effort of people that are trying to break up a rally they don't agree with.
There's a lot of responsibility to go around, Senator, but do you think Donald Trump in some ways directly responsible for this reaction?
Well, I don't know about directly responsible for the event tonight in Chicago, because this is clearly an organized effort to disrupt an event with someone they don't agree with. But I certainly think he bears responsibility for some of the things that have happened at other parts of his event and the general tone and atmosphere of his campaign, which has been about things like, the reason why things are going wrong in your life or in this country is because of this group of people versus that group of people. There is no doubt that he bears responsibility for that.
Listen, I want to talk to you about the strategy of other candidates in the race, because you talked about, I think you said, here's what you said, and I'm going to quote you. Clearly, John Kasich has a better shot at winning Ohio than I do. And if a voter concludes that voting for Kasich gives us the best chance to stop Donald Trump there, I anticipate that's what they'll do. Are you encouraging voters to go and vote for Kasich in Ohio And in
No, I was asked a question.
Yeah.
Basically, what I've said in Florida is Florida awards 99 delegates. If you win by one vote in Florida, you get 99 delegates.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of Florida's Republicans do not want Donald Trump to be our nominee. And all I've said to them is I'm the only one that has a chance to beat Donald Trump in Florida. And so, practically speaking, if you vote for John Kasich or Ted Cruz in Florida, you are in essence voting for Donald Trump because I'm the only one that can beat him. I was then asked about the message in Ohio, and I said, look, I'm not encouraging anyone to do anything in Ohio. I'm just other than to vote for us, but I would understand if a voter reaches the same in there, given the state of the race in that state.
But they're saying essentially what you were saying there is what you were trying to get people to do is have a brokered convention by doing that. Was that your plan?
No, I don't know what I'm not. Broker convention is a term people throw around loosely. That's not the case. That's not the way it works. The Republican Party, just like the Democratic Party, has rules in place to deal with the potential for the fact that no single candidate would have more than a majority of the delegates.
So that's not your intention.
And those rules have been in place for a reason. And it's not about a broker convention. It implies some smoke-filled room where people are going to go in there and parachute in a candidate that's not on the ballot. My sense is that well before the convention, these things will work its way through somehow. Even if someone doesn't have a majority, it'll work its way through somehow. But there are rules in place for a convention and a vote and so forth, but that doesn't imply something being brokered.
Yeah.
I think it implies, delegates voting, but we're far from that still. I do think we need to start thinking about it only because no candidate, including Donald Trump, unless he sweeps all the states on Tuesday night, has a clear and easy path to 1,237 delegates.
Just for clarity, that was not your intention with the answering of that question.
Which question? I'm sorry. The Ohio question?
Yeah, the Ohio question.
No, I was responding to a question that someone had, and I said to them, look, if in Ohio a voter concludes that voting for me helps Donald Trump because they don't think I have a chance to win, I understand and respect that.
I just want to make sure a broker convention was not your intention. I think you've made that clear. You said that it is not. So let's get back to what happened tonight at the Donald Trump event. We're talking about grown people here who are running for the presidency of the United States, to be president of the United States. So what do you think that the Republican Party has any responsibility, or can they, or should they step in and speak with Donald Trump about the atmosphere at his rallies?
Yeah, I just don't think the Republican Party has that kind of influence. The Republican Party is an organization that organizes the convention, organizes the debates, and so forth, but it doesn't really have any control over individual candidates, me or anybody else for that matter. I think Donald Trump is responsible for his own rhetoric. And I want to be clear, okay? What is happening tonight in Chicago, and by the way, as we see images of these police officers, they have a tough job in Chicago and tonight, so we want to thank them for their service. This is an organized effort to disrupt a rally. Okay, this is not some organic protest. We've seen this happen on college campuses as well. What they're doing is wrong. They are denying someone their First Amendment right to speak things. In America, you have a right to say whatever you want, even if it's offensive. You have a right to do that. And you don't have to agree with it, and you don't have to go. But putting that aside for a moment, the tone and tenor of Donald Trump's rallies over the last few months has been disturbing to a lot of people. And you are seeing him saying things like, and he can say it's a joke, but when someone who's running for president says, let's punch him, let's go get him out of here, or in the old days, they used to take people out on stretchers if they did that. I think you have to understand the impact that has. And if you're running for president, you have to understand that kind of rhetoric from a president or a major presidential candidate has ramifications beyond what you're seeing tonight in Chicago, which I think is just sad all the way around. I mean, I think the images that the world must be looking at now, it must seem to them like our republic is fracturing at the seams.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to watch. Senator Marco Rubio, thank you for calling in. Appreciate it. Have a good weekend. Thank you.